There is a hidden broadcast transmitting beneath the static of your television, a frequency designed to tear the mind apart. A man plummets 13 stories to his death, a casualty not of suicide, but of a shadow war fought inside the human psyche. The truth is buried behind two-way mirrors and inside the fractured realities of citizens who never knew they were the experiment. The walls of the room are breathing, pulsing to the erratic rhythm of a synthetic nightmare. An invisible frequency vibrates through the floorboards, whispering instructions he cannot ignore. The glass violently shatters. Dr. Frank Olson, an Army biological weapons researcher, plummets through the closed window pane, falling 13 stories to the pavement below. The official report calls it a tragic suicide, the culmination of severe depression. But the sterile, typed words of the police report hide a terrifying truth. 9 days earlier, at a remote cabin in Deep Creek Lake, Maryland, Olson had been handed a glass of Cointreau. He didn't know it was spiked with a massive dose of lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. This wasn't an accident. It was an experiment. A covert test conducted by his own colleagues in the CIA's top-secret MKUltra program. For over a week after that drink, Olson was a man unraveling. He experienced severe paranoia. He believed the CIA was putting something in his coffee to keep him awake. He thought people were coming to arrest him. The walls of reality were dissolving around him, replaced by a synthetic, chemically induced nightmare. He was taken to New York under the guise of psychiatric help, but instead, he ended up dead on a cold sidewalk. Olson wasn't a spy. He wasn't a traitor. He was a scientist, a father, and a patriot. Yet, he became an unwitting casualty in a psychological war his own government was waging. The CIA covered it up for decades, labeling it a stress-induced breakdown. But Olson wasn't the only one. He was just the one who made the headlines. How many others were trapped in a chemically altered reality, never knowing who held the syringe? Enter George Hunter White. A former Federal Narcotics Bureau officer, built like a bulldog and operating with the moral compass of a shadow. The CIA needed someone who understood the underworld to push their experiments further into the dark. They gave White a blank check and a terrifying mission: test LSD on the most vulnerable, unsuspecting targets available. Welcome to Operation Midnight Climax. White set up a string of safe houses in San Francisco and New York. From the outside, they were ordinary apartments. Inside, they were psychological slaughterhouses. White decorated them with French posters, installed recording equipment, and placed a two-way mirror in the bedroom. Behind that glass, White sat on a portable toilet, sipping martinis from a pitcher, and watching the horror unfold. He employed prostitutes to lure men, Johns, drifters, marginalized citizens, back to these rooms. The women were instructed to slip LSD into their drinks. The men had no idea what they were consuming. The tape recorders captured the ensuing madness. The frantic breathing. The terrified questions to empty rooms. The slow, terrifying plunge into a chemically induced hell. These men couldn't go to the police. Who would believe a man confessing to soliciting a prostitute and then claiming he was poisoned by invisible agents? They were trapped in an isolated reality, convinced they were simply losing their minds. White wrote in his diary that it was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest? He reveled in the power of playing God with human consciousness. But what happens to the minds of those men when the drug wears off, but the paranoia remains? Does the nightmare ever truly end, or does it just become the new reality? Fast forward to 1957. The air inside the San Francisco post office is thick with the smell of cheap tobacco, spilled alcohol, and the stifling warmth of too many bodies crammed into a government-issued room. Fluorescent lights emit a low, persistent buzz, casting an unnatural, sickly pallor over the holiday party. Wayne Ritchie, a U.S. deputy marshal, loosens his tie. He reaches for a simple drink of bourbon and soda, completely unaware that his life is about to shatter. He takes a sip. The liquid burns down his throat. The cold sweat begins within 30 minutes. It starts as a subtle tremor in his hands, then a sudden, sickening drop in his stomach. Within an hour, the room begins to spin violently. The drab beige walls appear to breathe, expanding and contracting with a horrifying rhythm. The colors of the festive decorations bleed into terrifying streaks of crimson and black. The faces of his trusted colleagues twist and contort into grotesque masks of malice, their voices distorting into a low, metallic drone that scrapes against his eardrums. Ritchie isn't a criminal. He isn't a John lurking in a red light district. He is a sworn officer of the law, a man trained to maintain order. But the CIA didn't care about his badge. They wanted to test a terrifying hypothesis. How does a heavily armed man react to sudden, extreme, chemically induced psychological distress? Ritchie's breathing turns shallow and frantic. The sterile smell of the post office is replaced by the phantom stench of copper and ozone. He flees the party in a blind panic, his mind fracturing into 1,000 jagged pieces. Driven by a synthetic terror he cannot comprehend, he attempts to rob a local bar at gunpoint, his grip on reality completely unmoored. He is subdued and arrested. His prestigious career is destroyed instantly. His entire life is shattered beyond repair. He spends 4 decades believing he simply broke down, carrying the heavy shame of an unexplainable mental collapse. It takes him 40 long years to uncover the classified truth: his bourbon was intentionally spiked by George Hunter White. He wasn't insane. He was an unwilling victim. A lab rat in a neat, pressed suit, monitored by unseen eyes. If the shadow government could inflict this unspeakable torment on one of their own armed agents, who on earth was safe from the creeping dread? The infection of paranoia wasn't confined to cheap hotel rooms and shadowy, wiretapped safehouses. It bled like a dark stain into the sterile, unforgiving concrete walls of federal penitentiaries across the country. Deep inside the maximum security block in Atlanta, young, ambitious inmate named James Whitey Bulger volunteers for what he genuinely believes is an ethical medical trial. The prison doctors tell him the goal is to find a groundbreaking cure for schizophrenia. In exchange for his cooperation, he is promised precious time off his lengthy sentence. It sounds like a fair trade. Instead of medicine, he is systematically injected with massive, mind-altering doses of LSD every single day for 15 agonizing months. The air in his solitary cell grows impossibly heavy, carrying the metallic tang of fear and the sterile smell of clinical iodine. The concrete walls around him begin to melt and weep, turning into liquid shadows that crawl toward his bunk. He is plunged into a relentless, synthetic hellscape, experiencing horrifying, inescapable visions of visceral blood, crushing death, and skeletal faces screaming in the static. The hum of the prison's electrical grid amplifies into a deafening roar inside his skull. His body is constantly drenched in cold sweat, his muscles locked in a perpetual state of rigid terror. The participating inmates are repeatedly told they are noble pioneers helping the future of humanity, but in reality, they are being subjected to systematic, government-sanctioned torture. The doctors watch through reinforced glass, their faces impassive, taking clinical notes on his suffering. Bulger would later write that the prolonged chemical assault was the most terrifying experience of my life. The CIA wasn't looking for a cure. They were testing a much darker hypothesis. Could they forcefully break a hardened man's will entirely? Could they wipe his mind completely blank, reducing a human being to an empty vessel? They certainly succeeded in breaking him down, stripping away his fundamental grip on reality. But the terrifying question remains, what monstrous entity did they build in his empty place? Did the agonizing crucible of Nkultra's psychological warfare forge one of America's most notorious and ruthless mob bosses, a monster created by the very authorities sworn to protect the public? The pharmacological effects of lysergic acid diethylamide are technically temporary, fading from the bloodstream within hours, but the psychological trauma inflicted by MKUltra was a permanent, festering wound. The most devastating aspect of the program was the secrecy. The unsuspecting victims had absolutely no idea they had been covertly drugged by a foreign substance. Left completely in the dark, they genuinely, deeply believed they were spontaneously losing their sanity, succumbing to a sudden and incurable mental collapse. This is the true, insidious horror embedded at the core of Subproject 68. It was the deliberate, calculated weaponization of mental illness by the state. For decades after the secret dosing, these broken individuals lived in a suffocating state of perpetual hypervigilance, their nervous systems permanently frayed. Unrelenting paranoia became their new, exhausting baseline for existence. A simple, unexpected knock at the front door at dusk would trigger a blinding spike of pure panic. A slightly strange, bitter taste in a morning cup of coffee would cause them to break out in a freezing cold sweat, their hearts pounding against their ribs. The lingering fear they felt wasn't a hallucination or a trick of the light, it was a deeply conditioned, biological response to a very real, invisible predator that had already attacked them from the shadows. They were coldly abandoned by the system, left to somehow piece together the jagged shards of their shattered minds entirely alone in the dark. Meanwhile, their government tormentors, the men who poured the drinks and watched through the glass, retired comfortably, receiving generous federal pensions, accolades, and medals of honor. How do you even begin to rebuild a normal, functioning life when the very foundation of your reality, your own perception, your own memory, your own sanity, has been so deliberately and methodically destroyed by the very people meant to protect you? The general public only knows the thin, visible surface of the atrocity. They know about the spiked drinks of LSD. They know about the heavily monitored safe houses in major cities. They know the tragic name of Frank Olson. But the massive, frozen iceberg of the MKUltra program extends so much deeper into the pitch-black waters of unchecked government power. There were dozens of highly classified subprojects dedicated to exploring the dark limits of weaponized hypnosis. There were brutal experiments involving prolonged isolation in pitch-black sensory deprivation tanks, where subjects were left until their minds collapsed under the weight of nothingness. There were calculated, sinister attempts at the literal implantation of completely false, fabricated memories into the brains of unconsenting adults. The ultimate, chilling goal was the relentless search for the legendary Manchurian Candidate, a perfectly compliant, completely programmed assassin who could kill on command and remember nothing. Because Richard Helms burned the archives, we only possess the dry, heavily redacted financial records and expense receipts, we do not have the crucial, detailed clinical notes. We will never truly know the full, catastrophic extent of the permanent psychological damage inflicted on thousands upon thousands of completely anonymous American citizens. The incinerated documents leave behind a terrifying void, an endless dark space where the absolute worst, most horrifying possibilities of human experimentation reside undisturbed. We have documented proof of what they were entirely willing to do to known figures like Wayne Ritchie and Whitey Bulger. What unspeakable torments did they inflict on the helpless drifters, the forgotten prisoners, the ones whose names we will never, ever know. The true, bottomless depth of this historical horror is the vastness of the unknown. It begs a terrifying question that lingers in the background noise of society. Are there still activated sleepwalkers hiding among us today, silently programmed by a long-forgotten, classified experiment? The sanitized, official government story definitively states that the MKUltra program permanently ended in the 1970s. We are told the brutal experiments were completely shut down, the rogue agents were reassigned, and the dark books were firmly closed forever. But the lingering, toxic legacy of profound paranoia remains permanently embedded in the culture. The fundamental, unwritten contract of trust between the ordinary citizen and the immense power of the state was irrevocably broken by those classified operations. The chilling, undeniable knowledge that the federal government is fully capable of viewing its own innocent people as entirely expendable, disposable test subjects acts as a silent virus that has deeply infected the collective American psyche. The long, stretching shadows of Operation Midnight Climax have not faded, they continue to stretch menacingly across our modern, heavily monitored landscape. In our current, hyper-connected age of constant digital surveillance, behavioral data tracking, and sophisticated algorithmic manipulation, the specific tools and methods have certainly evolved, but the ultimate, underlying goal remains exactly the same: total psychological control. The crude, literal syringe of lysergic acid has simply been replaced by the glowing, addictive screen of the device you hold in your hand. The creepy, hidden two-way mirror in the San Francisco safe house has been upgraded to the always-on smartphone camera staring back at you from your nightstand. You don't need to be locked in a concrete cell to have your perceptions altered anymore. Your reality is being subtly shifted every time you scroll. The humming lights and sterile smell of the laboratory have been replaced by the comforting glow of the feed. The most terrifying question we face today isn't simply whether a new version of MKUltra is secretly still happening in some underground bunker. The real, inescapable question that should keep you awake in a cold sweat is this: if they were actively controlling your mind right now, would you even possess the clarity to know?